They're as deeply rooted in biology as the dominance hierarchy is rooted in biology. And we already know the answer to that. The dominance hierarchy has been around for 350 million years.
I'm really sad to see that people are disenchanted and nihilistic and depressed and anxious and aimless and perverse and vengeful and all of those things. It's terrible. And then to see people question whether that's necessary and then to start to rise out of it. It's like, it's so fun. Like last night I was after my talk. It's overwhelming. Think about these things, but I was after my talk last night, and so all these people line up, and they have their 15 seconds with me, and they're kind of tentative. They're excited and attentive when they come up to talk to me, and then they have 15 seconds of time to tell me something. I'm really listening to them, and they're hesitant about whether or not to share the good news about their life, and I think it's often because when people share good news about their life, people don't necessarily respond positively. They don't get encouragement. And people need so little encouragement. It's just unbelievable. And so they'll tell me something good, and I think, God, that's so good. Somebody says, oh, I'm getting along way better with my father. I hadn't seen him for 10 years, and now we get along. It's like, God, great. And the power of that, you can't overstate the power of that for individuals to get their life together. The individual is an unbelievably powerful force, and every single person who gets their act together a little bit has the capacity to spread that around them. It's a chain reaction, and so it's a lovely thing to see.
When you're trying to become financially stable, you need to make sure that you invest your money for the long term. If you start out with just a little bit early on in your life, that little bit can turn into something huge and something large and a huge sum of money for you down the line. But it's all about consistently investing and putting in as much as you possibly can, but not too much to where it hurts you financially.
These words that are bandied about, like vision and leadership, you can drill down into them very hard and start to make some sense out of them if you're willing to grapple with them at the level of detail. And I do a lot of that in this book, because a lot of it is about orienting yourself in your life. And so here's something, for example. We know that, imagine that you have your employees write out a business plan for their own development, right? So the plan would be, how can I become a better employee? And then you have half your employees do that, and the other half you have write out a different plan, which is, how can I put my life together properly? And then you wait a year and you measure the performance of the two groups. Is the people who make the life plan outperform the people who make the business plan? And that's really quite a stunning finding, really. It's not what you'd expect. And what it means is that if you're going to be effective at work, then you should first of all be effective in your life. And even more importantly, if you have a vision for the direction of your life and your job is serving that purpose, then instantly your job becomes motivating. Because you might be sitting there and thinking, well, why am I doing this repetitive and rather dull task? Explanation or objection. And it's also really useful in relationship to your own mind, because if you want to do something that's difficult and that requires energy, a lot of different subsystems in your mind are going to throw up objections. It's like, well, maybe that isn't what you should be doing right now. Maybe you should be doing the dishes or vacuuming or watching TV or looking at YouTube. Or if you're really sneaky, when you're trying to do something hard, what your brain does is give you something else hard to do that's not quite as hard, so that you can feel justified in not doing the thing you're supposed to because you're doing something else useful. And if you give in to that temptation, which you often will, then it wins, and because it wins, it gets a little dopamine kick and it grows stronger. Anything you let win, the internal argument, grows. And anything you let be defeated shrinks, because it's punished. It doesn't get to have its way. So that's another thing really to remember. Don't practice what you do not want to become. And because they're neurological circuits, you build those things in there, man, they're not going anywhere. You can build another little machine to inhibit them. That's the best you can do. Once they're in there, you can't get them out. And then the ones you build to inhibit can be taken out by stress, and the old habits will come back up. Doing something important with your life, by your own definition, because that's the game that we're playing. You get to define the terms, at least initially. Maybe you're prone to cause trouble just because you don't have anything better to do. Trouble is more interesting than boring. That's something you learn if you read Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky knew that extraordinarily well. And so if you're not doing something, if you're not pushing yourself to the limits of your capacity, then you have plenty of leftover willpower energy and resources to devote to causing interesting trouble. And it's not self-destructive, because what it is an attempt to, it's like the diagnosis of an illness. It's like if that does happen to be the case for you, or to some degree, maybe it's only 10% of you or something, or maybe it's 90%, well then coming to terms with that is excellent, because then maybe you can stop doing it. And what would be the downside to that? You'd have to give up your resentment, obviously, and your hatred and all of that, and that's really annoying, because those emotions are they're easy to engage in, and they're engaging, and they have this feeling of self-righteousness with them, and that goes along with them. But you're not doing this in order to put yourself down. You're doing this in order to separate the wheat from the chaff, and to leave everything that you don't have to be behind.
So thank you all so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, please go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let us know what you thought down in the comment section below.